Let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly listened? Not just heard, but listened. Because what if I told you that your ability to hear and your ability to stay balanced are two of the most powerful drivers of your brain's focus, performance, and even memory? We often think of hearing as passive. Noise goes in, thoughts come out, but neuroscience tells a different story. I'm Dr. Andrew Huberman, professor of neurobiology at Stanford School of Medicine, and today I want to blow your mind with something most people don't even consider. Your ears and your inner balance system are actually controlling your brain's ability to learn, not just metaphorically, I mean biologically. Let me break it down. Imagine waking up in the morning and hearing your favorite song come on. It instantly shifts your mood. You feel more awake, more alive, maybe even more motivated to start your day. Now contrast that with the blaring of an alarm clock or the honk of a horn outside your window. Same ears, same brain, completely different mental state. That's the hidden power of sound. It's not just background noise, it's a switchboard for your brain's attention system. Deep inside your brainstem is a network called the Reticular Activating System, RAS. This network is like a light dimmer for your alertness. It controls how awake, how focused, how ready you are to respond to the world. And guess what? One of the most powerful activators of the RAS is sound. That means the things you hear, consciously or unconsciously, are constantly shaping your brain state. They either dial you in or tune you out. Let's take a real-life example. Think about walking into a noisy coffee shop. There's the sound of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversation, a song playing from the speakers, maybe even someone typing on a keyboard nearby. Your brain hears all of that. Even if you're not trying to pay attention, your auditory system is processing it and feeding that information into your attention centers. If you're trying to read or write, your brain is splitting its resources, some on your task, some on all those random sounds. It's like trying to study while someone whispers in your ear the whole time. But here's where it gets interesting. The reverse is also true. You can actually use sound to shift your brain into a state of high focus. White noise, pink noise, or rhythmic sounds like certain frequencies of binaural beats can reduce auditory distractions by masking irrelevant input and synchronizing your brain waves. It's not magic, it's measurable. In lab settings, people who listen to specific types of sound while working have shown better memory recall, faster processing speed, and longer periods of sustained attention. This isn't just something that happens in the lab, it happens in daily life too. Ever notice how athletes have a pump-up playlist before a game, or how certain teachers use ambient music during quiet study time in classrooms? That's not just for atmosphere, that's neuroscience. That's auditory input tuning the brain toward a desired state. Even infants respond to this. Babies fall asleep faster with lullabies or white noise because their developing nervous systems are deeply sensitive to auditory cues. As adults, we think we've grown past that, but we haven't. Our brains are still wired the same way. The sounds we expose ourselves to, whether it's calming rain, high-energy music, or chaotic traffic, are continuously shaping our internal environment. Think about how this affects your daily habits. If you're working in a noisy office or trying to study at home with the TV in the background, your brain is operating under constant distraction. It's no wonder you feel tired or scattered. But if you take just a few minutes to create a sound environment that supports focus, whether that's silence, noise-canceling headphones, or carefully chosen instrumental music, you're actually optimizing your brain chemistry for learning and productivity. The most powerful part of this is that it's within your control. You can choose your sound environment. You can train your attention by training your ears. You don't need a pill. You don't need a hack. You just need to be intentional with what you let into your ears. Because hearing isn't just passive, it's active. It's a lever, and when you pull that lever the right way, you activate parts of your brain that are essential for focus, performance, and long-term growth. Think about the last time you felt mentally off. Maybe you couldn't concentrate, your thoughts were scattered, or your motivation was buried under a layer of fog. Most of us tend to blame stress, lack of sleep, or too much screen time. And while those things absolutely matter, there's a lesser-known player quietly operating in the background that holds surprising influence over your mental sharpness, your sense of balance. It might sound strange at first, balance, like standing upright, but your ability to stay physically balanced isn't just about avoiding tripping over a curve or holding a yoga pose. It's about how your brain knows where your body is in space, how it maintains internal order, and most importantly, how it supports higher brain functions like attention, memory, and decision-making. The part of your brain responsible for all of this is your vestibular system, and it lives in your inner ear, just a few millimeters away from the structures that handle hearing. Let's break this down in a way that hits home. Picture a child in a classroom, struggling to sit still. They rock in their chair, twist their body, even lean their head from side to side. To many adults, that looks like fidgeting, distraction. But from a neuroscience perspective, the child might actually be doing something quite smart, activating their vestibular system to stay alert. Movement, particularly those that involve changes in head position, send rich streams of data into the brain about body orientation and space. That input stabilizes activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus, impulse control, and executive function. In other words, that child is unknowingly self-regulating their focus through balance-based movement. Now shift the scene. Imagine an adult who works at a desk all day. They sit motionless, eyes glued to a screen, body locked into a fixed posture. After a few hours, they feel tired, not physically, but mentally. Their thoughts are slower. They reread the same sentence 5 times. That fog they're feeling isn't just mental fatigue. It's also a lack of vestibular stimulation. When the body remains still for too long, especially the head, the balance system sends less input to the brain. Without that constant stream of feedback, the areas of the brain responsible for alertness and working memory start to dim down. Movement isn't just helpful, it's essential. Even a brief walk or changing head position can reawaken the system. That's why so many people say they get their best ideas during a walk or after a workout. It's not a coincidence, it's biology. The rhythm of your steps, the shift in visual perspective, the slight bounce of your head, all of it feeds the brain what it needs to refocus and realign. Another powerful real-life example, athletes. Have you ever noticed how high-performing athletes, gymnasts, skaters, martial artists often show incredible mental control and sharpness off the field? It's not just discipline. Their training inherently sharpens their vestibular system. Every spin, flip, or balance challenge trains the brain to operate with high levels of precision. That neurological refinement translates into better focus, faster decisions, and clearer thinking, benefits we all crave in our daily lives. You don't need to be an athlete to tap into this. Simple acts like standing on one foot while brushing your teeth, doing slow head tilts, or even dancing in your living room are activating this system. These movements fuel your brain, not with glucose, but with sensory information that enhances cognitive control. What we're beginning to understand is that the vestibular system is not just a physical system. It's deeply tied to our ability to think clearly and function at a high level. Your balance is telling your brain whether you're grounded, alert, and in control. When that system is tuned and awake, you think better, act better, and perform better. It's one of the most underrated tools for mental clarity, and it's literally built into your body. So next time you feel unfocused or mentally stuck, don't just reach for caffeine or try to power through. Stand up, move, tilt your head, engage your balance. Because when your body finds its center, your mind often follows. Have you ever wondered why your best ideas often come when you're walking? Or why kids seem to learn better after recess? Or why you feel clearer, more focused, even a little more confident after a quick workout or a simple stroll around the block? It's not just coincidence, and it's not just about getting your blood flowing. It's because movement, especially movement that activates your balance system, is one of the most powerful ways to switch your brain into a focused, learning-ready state. The reason lies deep inside your inner ear, in a system called the vestibular apparatus. This little structure does a lot more than help you stand upright. It constantly sends messages to your brain about your orientation in space, whether you're tilting, spinning, moving forward or backward. These messages go straight to areas of the brain that control attention, alertness, and memory formation. When you move, particularly when your head moves, your vestibular system lights up. And when that system is activated, it energizes your brain's executive centers, boosting your ability to focus, plan, and retain information. This is why movement is so tightly linked to learning. Think about a young child again. They naturally move while learning. They bounce, rock, tilt their heads, spin around. It's not a lack of discipline, it's the brain's way of staying online. That movement keeps the vestibular system engaged, which in turn keeps the brain alert and focused. When we force kids to sit still for hours, We're not just asking them to be quiet, we're asking their brains to work without one of their primary sources of fuel. Now let's bring this into your world. How often do you start your day by jumping straight into work, sitting at your desk, opening your laptop, trying to get your brain to kick into high gear, but you feel sluggish? You reread emails, lose track of your thoughts, get distracted. Instead of trying harder, the real secret might be simpler. Get up and move. A 5-minute walk, a few stretches, some simple neck rolls. These aren't just for your body. They're tools to flip the switch on your nervous system. This connection between movement and focus isn't just something we've observed, it's something science has measured. In numerous studies, even light physical activity before a cognitive task, like walking or doing balance exercises, has been shown to significantly improve focus, reaction time, and memory retention. It's not about burning calories, it's about activating the vestibular system and flooding the brain with the input it needs to perform. Even something as basic as standing while you work can help. When you're upright, your posture demands subtle balance adjustments that keep your vestibular system engaged. That's part of why standing desks have become more than just a workplace trend. They help keep your brain in a more alert, focused state. Movement is a natural stimulant. It costs nothing. It's always available, and it works fast. Think of it as a mental ignition key. When your brain feels stalled, foggy, or overwhelmed, movement reboots the system. And not just random movement, but the kind that challenges your orientation, walking across uneven ground, turning your head from side to side, balancing on one leg. These movements tell your brain, stay sharp, stay present, stay awake. And here's the beautiful part, it doesn't take hours. Just a few minutes of movement can shift your entire mental state. Next time you're about to study, work, or create something meaningful, take a moment to move your body. Walk, breathe, roll your shoulders, tilt your head, give your vestibular system the signal it craves, because the fastest path to mental clarity might just be through your feet. And when your body is engaged, your brain lights up like a city at sunrise, ready, focused, and wide awake. Imagine trying to build a house with blurry blueprints. No matter how hard you work or how skilled your hands are, if the instructions aren't clear, the outcome will always be shaky. The same principle applies to learning. And the blueprints of learning, the very foundation, are the signals your brain receives through your senses. Of all these senses, hearing is one of the most powerful, because long before we can read or write, we listen. And the quality of what we hear shapes how well we understand, remember, and communicate. Think about this, a student sitting in the back of a noisy classroom. The teacher is speaking, but there's background chatter, maybe traffic sounds outside, maybe a fan humming too loud. The student hears words, but not clearly. Some syllables get lost, some phrases sound muffled, and what the brain receives is not a clean message, but a scrambled one. That scrambled signal doesn't just disappear, it gets stored as is, like trying to memorize a blurry photograph. When that student later tries to recall the lesson, their brain is working off an unclear recording. The result? Confusion, frustration, and the false belief that they're just not good at learning. But this has nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with auditory input. When the brain receives poor quality audio due to noise, distraction, or even mild hearing issues, its ability to encode that information drops dramatically. Encoding is how the brain translates what we hear into memory. If you don't encode well, you don't remember well. It's not a character flaw, it's neuroscience. This isn't just a classroom issue. Consider adults in meetings or virtual calls. If the audio is distorted, if someone speaks too quickly or unclearly, we miss key information. And then we spend mental energy trying to fill in the gaps, guessing what was said instead of focusing on what's important. That's mental exhaustion, and it drains our cognitive fuel. On the flip side, when someone speaks clearly, in a quiet space, and our hearing is sharp, our brain locks onto the message like a magnet. Learning becomes effortless. Now let's bring it closer to daily life. Ever notice how much easier it is to remember a song lyric than a paragraph from a book? That's because music uses rhythm and repetition, both powerful auditory tools that help the brain encode information. When the auditory signal is strong, rich, and engaging, the brain doesn't just absorb it, it latches onto it. This is why audio tools like audiobooks, podcasts, and voice notes can be so effective for certain learners. The ear becomes a portal for deep understanding if the input is clear. But here's something even more inspiring. Auditory clarity is something we can improve. We can create better sound environments. We can reduce background noise when studying or working. We can use tools like noise-canceling headphones, or even listen to speech-enhancing settings when watching educational content. Most importantly, we can become more mindful of how we speak to others. Clear speech isn't just polite, it's a gift. When you speak clearly to someone, you're not just giving them information, you're giving their brain the best chance to retain it. If you want to be a better learner or a better communicator, don't just focus on what's said, focus on what's heard, because the brain doesn't store what it barely catches. It stores what it fully hears, processes, and feels. So whether you're teaching, learning, or simply having a conversation, remember this: the quality of your hearing and the clarity of the sound around you could be the difference between forgetting and understanding for life. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself trying to balance on a tightrope. You're not moving fast, you're not running or jumping, you're simply trying to stay upright. Every small shift of your foot, every tiny sway of your arms, every tilt of your head is sending signals to your brain. You are fully present. Your mind is not wandering, it's locked in. That's the incredible relationship between balance and awareness. The moment your body is challenged to stay grounded, your mind sharpens. Balance isn't just physical, it's mental. And when you activate your balance system, you automatically awaken your awareness, your focus, and your ability to stay in the moment. Now let's zoom out of the tightrope and into something more relatable: your daily routine. You're walking down a busy street while texting. You trip slightly on a crack in the sidewalk. For a split second, everything around you disappears: your phone, the noise, your thoughts, because your brain shifts fully into the moment to correct your balance. That jolt of alertness, that's your vestibular system waking up your conscious awareness. That's the hidden power of balance. It doesn't just keep you from falling, it forces your mind into the now. This connection between balance and awareness is deeply rooted in how our brains evolved. In the earliest stages of human development, staying balanced was tied to survival. If you couldn't sense your body's position or correct your posture fast enough, you risked injury or worse. The brain began wiring itself to treat balance as a priority. That wiring still exists today. When your balance system is activated, your brain's attentional networks light up. You become more aware not just of your body, but of your surroundings, your thoughts, your emotions. It's like tuning into a higher resolution of the world. Have you ever noticed how a simple activity like standing on one leg can snap you out of mental fog? Or how doing yoga or Tai Chi, both rooted in balance, can bring you mental clarity even if you weren't sweating? That's because balanced tasks demand real-time communication between your muscles, inner ears, eyes, and brain. That coordination requires concentration. It turns down the noise of distraction and tunes up the frequency of focus. Even children instinctively know this. Watch a kid walk across the edge of a curb like it's a tightrope. They're not just playing, they're training. They're learning to calibrate their body and brain, moment by moment. That's the foundation of awareness, knowing where you are, what you're doing, and how you're moving through the world. Think of people who perform on stage: dancers, martial artists, gymnasts. Their training in balance makes them hyper-aware. They know exactly how their body feels in motion, and that awareness doesn't stop when the performance ends. It carries over into everything they do: how they sit, how they walk, how they think. Their brains are trained not just for movement, but for presence. That's the power you unlock when you activate your balance system. And you don't need to be a performer to use this. Try balancing on one foot while brushing your teeth. Walk heel to toe across your room with your eyes open, then closed. Add gentle head turns while standing still. These small challenges sharpen your balance, and by extension, your awareness. They train your brain to stay engaged, to stop drifting, to show up. Awareness is not just about meditation or mindfulness. It's about knowing yourself in space and time. It's about catching yourself when your thoughts wander and bringing yourself back. Your vestibular system, the part of your inner ear that controls balance, is your anchor. When you activate it, you root your attention in the present. You become the observer of your own thoughts. You don't need silence, incense, or mantras. You just need your body, your balance, and the courage to lean into the moment. Because the more balanced you are physically, the the more balanced you become mentally. And in a world of constant distractions, that balance may be your greatest source of strength. Think about the last time you were truly captivated by something you heard, a moving speech, a powerful song, a loved one sharing something close to their heart. You weren't just hearing the words, you were feeling them. Your entire nervous system lit up, your brain focused, your emotions stirred, your body stilled. That's the incredible depth of what hearing can do. It's not just about sound waves entering your ears. It's about your brain interpreting meaning, emotion, and context. And the richer the auditory experience, the deeper the brain's response, especially when it comes to learning, focus, and long-term memory. When we hear something with clarity and emotional charge, our brain goes into high gear. Specific areas like the auditory cortex, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex begin working together to process and encode what we're experiencing. The result, enhanced attention and significantly better memory retention. This is why the tone of a teacher's voice can determine whether students are engaged or zoning out. It's why a calm, confident speaker captures the room, while a monotone, unclear one fades into the background. Your ears are not just sound collectors, they are emotional filters that decide what your brain should focus on. Consider storytelling, something that has existed long before books, podcasts, or PowerPoint presentations. The human brain is wired for narrative. When someone tells a story with the right tone, pauses, inflections, and rhythm, the listener's brain begins to mirror the speaker's experience. This is called neural coupling. Essentially, the listener and speaker's brains start to synchronize. That's how you remember the moral of a story your grandfather told you 20 years ago, but you can't recall what was in the email you read this morning. The power of how something is said can elevate what is said into lasting memory. Let's bring it into the classroom, the boardroom, or even your daily conversations. Imagine a student sitting in a class where the teacher speaks with passion, clarity, and variation. Their voice rises and falls with meaning, emphasizes key points, and invites attention. That student's brain is more likely to engage, process, and remember the lesson. Now imagine the same lesson taught in a flat, robotic tone, with no modulation or emotional rhythm. The words may be the same, but the learning is not. Because the auditory experience, the emotional signature of the sound was missing. Even more fascinating, research shows that the presence of rhythmic sound, such as music or patterned speech, can enhance neuroplasticity. That means the brain becomes more adaptable, more ready to learn, more capable of forming new connections. This is why many people find it easier to study with instrumental music, or why songs are such effective tools for learning languages. The brain doesn't just crave information, it craves meaningful, rhythmic, emotionally relevant sound. This applies outside of learning too. In relationships, the tone of your voice can build connection or create distance. In leadership, it can inspire teams or cause them to disengage. In personal growth, the way you speak to yourself, even in your thoughts, can either uplift your focus or drag it down. We often overlook the auditory quality of our environment, but it shapes our mental landscape more than we realize. So how do we make this work in our daily lives? First, become aware of your auditory space. Reduce background noise when you're trying to focus. Choose voices, real or recorded, that energize you. Be intentional about how you speak and what you listen to. Even slight improvements in auditory clarity and emotional tone can dramatically elevate your focus and your ability to absorb information. Picture yourself walking into a room filled with noise, phones ringing, people talking over each other, a fan buzzing loudly in the corner. You try to focus on the task at hand, maybe reading a document or listening to someone speak, but your mind keeps drifting. The noise competes for your attention. Your brain, in its effort to filter out distractions, starts to feel exhausted. It's not that you're lazy or unmotivated, it's that your brain is in a battle between signal and noise. This invisible struggle happens more often than we realize, and it shows us just how much our auditory environment affects our ability to focus and learn. The auditory system is incredibly powerful. It's always on. Even when you're asleep, your ears are listening. But it doesn't just receive sound passively, it processes, prioritizes, and decides what deserves your attention. When your environment is full of chaotic, meaningless, or jarring sounds, your brain has to work overtime just to maintain a baseline level of focus. It's like trying to read a book while standing in the middle of a crowded train station. You can do it, but the effort required drains your cognitive energy quickly. This is where auditory filtering becomes crucial. Auditory filtering is your brain's ability to separate the useful from the useless, to zero in on what matters and tune out the rest. And this filtering ability is like a muscle. It can be trained, strengthened, and sharpened, but it can also be overwhelmed and fatigued. Think about a child in a noisy classroom trying to understand a teacher's instructions. If that child can't filter out the sounds of other kids shuffling papers, whispering, or tapping their pencils, then every sentence the teacher says comes through like static-filled radio. Over time, that child becomes mentally tired, frustrated, and disconnected from learning, not because they aren't intelligent, but because their auditory system is overloaded. Now take that same principle and apply it to your own day. How often do you try to focus with music playing, notifications pinging, and conversations happening nearby? You might tell yourself you're multitasking, but what you're actually doing is forcing your brain to switch rapidly between stimuli. This constant switching reduces comprehension, weakens memory encoding, and leads to shallow learning. The real key to deep focus lies in creating an environment where the auditory channel is calm, purposeful, and controlled. And here's the beauty of it. Once you begin to notice how your auditory world shapes your mental world, you can start to make changes that dramatically increase your focus and learning potential. Begin by designing pockets of silence. Before tackling an important task, pause for a moment in stillness. Let your ears reset. Reduce background noise where possible. Turn off the TV in the next room. Use noise-canceling headphones or play ambient sounds that support concentration rather than compete with it. This also applies to the way we listen to others. In a noisy environment, even the most heartfelt conversation can lose its emotional weight. But when you speak in a quiet space and truly listen to someone without distraction, you build connection and understanding. That's learning too, not from books, but from people. Even more, when you develop a habit of intentionally shaping your auditory environment, your brain begins to adapt. You'll find that you can enter focused states more quickly, stay in them longer, and absorb information more deeply. You'll also become more sensitive to noise, not in a bothersome way, but in an intelligent way. Your brain will begin to crave clarity, not chaos. It will seek meaning, not volume. And in doing so, you'll find yourself thinking more clearly, working more efficiently, and learning with greater joy. So if you want to become sharper, more focused, and more effective in how you learn and lead, pay close attention to the sounds that surround you, because every noise or silence is either fueling your brain or fighting it. The choice is yours. Imagine standing on a beach at sunrise. The waves gently roll in, the breeze brushes past your skin, and for a moment your thoughts quiet down. You are fully present, not in the past, not in the future, but completely here. That moment of stillness, that clarity, is what the brain craves when it's trying to learn something new. But here's what most people don't realize. Moments like that don't just happen, they can be trained. And two of the most powerful tools to bring us into that state of mental presence and clarity are our hearing and balance systems. When these systems are aligned, engaged, and working in harmony, the brain enters a state of optimal focus, a zone where learning isn't forced, it flows. This is what neuroscientists call a regulated state. It's when your nervous system isn't in fight or flight mode, and your attention isn't scattered across 1,000 things. In a regulated state, your breathing slows down, your heartbeat finds a rhythm, and your brain can devote full energy to processing information, solving problems, and absorbing new ideas. And the fastest way to get into that state, you guessed it, through sound and movement. When you focus on specific auditory input, like calm music or a steady voice, or when you engage your balance system with slow, intentional movements, your brain starts to sync up. You move from chaos to coherence. Think about a dancer warming up before a performance. They're not just stretching muscles, they're dialing in their balance, attuning their ears to the music, aligning their body and mind. By the time they step on stage, they're not distracted, anxious, or thinking about dinner plans. They are in the zone. That state of flow, where everything feels connected and effortless, is the exact state that primes the brain for high-level learning. It's not magic, it's biology. And it's not limited to dancers or athletes. You can experience this every day. Ever notice how much easier it is to focus after a walk in nature? How clearly you can think after listening to a favorite song with your eyes closed? These aren't coincidences. Rhythmic movement and soothing auditory input stabilize your nervous system. They bring your brain into a regulated state where your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, planning, and learning, can finally take the lead. Instead of reacting, you're creating. Instead of surviving, you're growing. This is especially important in our modern world, where sensory overload is constant. Notifications, traffic noise, news headlines, multitasking, it's all pulling your nervous system into a state of alert. And in that state, learning becomes harder. You can't retain information when your brain is worried, distracted, or flooded with stress hormones. That's why building a practice around sensory regulation, like controlled breathing, sound therapy, or gentle balance exercises, isn't just for yogis or meditators. It's for anyone who wants to think clearly, work smarter, and live with intention. Let's go even more personal. Picture yourself preparing for a big meeting or a major exam. You've studied, rehearsed, reviewed, but your thoughts are racing. You feel off balance, literally and mentally. Now imagine stepping aside for 5 minutes. You put on headphones and listen to steady, calming sounds. You gently sway, stand on one leg, or move through a short series of balance exercises. As your body steadies, your mind follows. That's regulation. And when you step into the meeting or test, you don't just show up, you perform. This kind of brain-body synchronization is not a luxury, it's a necessity. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes to enter the learning zone at will. You're no longer at the mercy of stress, distraction, or emotional chaos. You're in command of your state. And when you control your state, you control your outcomes. So remember this, hearing and balance aren't just background systems, they're your personal GPS to mental clarity. And when you tune into them, you don't just learn better, you live better.